scroll another two. I'll have to get down one too.
It must be twisted. Because it's like that's the hooks and that's...
Okay, now I'll pick that up. Very good, yeah. And you've got it. Actually, that's right. Because what you do is you lift from your legs, you push down, pull from...
And then sit down as quick as possible.
It's not that heavy this time.
I'm going to leave the two of you to wrestle that while I get everything else put together here. Shalom.
Maybe when you're ready to start.
Sorry, I've just had a momentary brain fog and I can't remember what service we decided to do. Can you remember what service we decided to do, Vince?
I can tell you the page number. The page number is 112.
Okay. Do you know what service?
We tried to bring her. She was very rebellious.
It's a lot heavier on the...
Can you tell us? Shabbat shalom, everyone. On this, it's hoping for a bright sunny morning, but at least it's warm out there. And welcome to everyone who's watching us. We're going to begin this morning on page 112. It's 112 with Shabbat morning service number 2. We begin, of course, with Matovu.
Adonai et ratzo, Elohim barov hasdecha, Elohim barov hasdecha, Aneini be'emet yishecha.
We continue on the bottom of page 112 together. Eternal God, a mystery surrounds my life. What came before it and what lies beyond it are shrouded in darkness. But in the darkness is your presence, and in the mystery your love. No mind can grasp the splendor of your being. No tongue express the majesty of your works. Yet there are times when we sense reality that is beyond our mortal sight. May the Sabbath be such a time for us. Help us to hear your voice, to find your image in our souls, and to be at peace. We continue on page 113 with Elohai Shama. Give thanks for the return of our souls to us after our sleep.
Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. If you don't know the words, try humming along. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. 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 Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai.
We praise your God, in whose hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Baruch Shemar v'haya haolam, Baruch Hu, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechulal b'fi amo, משובח ומפואר בלשון חסידיו ועבדיו, בשפחות וזמירות נגדל לך ונמליך לך מלכנו יחיד חי העולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מחולל לתשבחות. We continue with Psalm 19 as we read responsively. The heavens declare the glory of God.
The sky proclaims God's handiwork.
Day unto day utters speech.
Night unto night teaches knowledge.
Yet there is no speech. There are no words.
Not a sound of them is heard.
And still their call goes out to all the earth.
And their message to the end of the world.
God's teaching is perfect.
Reviving the soul.
God's word is unfailing.
Making wise the simple.
God's precepts are right.
Delighting the mind.
God's commandments are clear.
Enlightening the eyes.
God's doctrine is pure.
Enduring forever.
God's guidance is true.
And altogether just.
They are more to be desired than gold, than any amount of fine gold.
Sweeter than honey from the honeycomb.
Your servant pays heed to them.
For on keeping them much depends.
Who is aware of errors?
Cleanse me therefore of unconscious sins.
Hold back your servant also from willful sins.
Let them not control me.
Then I shall be blameless.
And innocent of grave transgression.
Hiu ratzonim refi v'higioni bi lifanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. We continue with Ani.
You won't know the tune because I wrote it back in 2006 and it's had little airing since. And I've forgotten it. Anin zamarot v'shirim ero. Ki elecha nafshi taharo nafshi chimdat b'tzel yadecha ladat korat sodecha Videi daveri chodecha Omei libi el dodecha Yerav nasihi elecha Ki nafshi taro elecha.
Before we rise for the Baruch Hu, just like to see if we can welcome anybody who's out there that you can see.
We have Michelle and we have Judith on Facebook.
Lovely. Welcome to them.
Probably my parents on YouTube. And that's what we've got at the moment.
All right. Well, welcome to everyone who's watching us anywhere, who's joined us from anywhere. It's nice to have you here. So we will now turn to page 135. Yishtabach. Please rise. Yishtabach Shemcha La'ad Malkeinu, Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh B'Shamayim U'Ba'aretz. Ki Lecha Na'eh Adonai Eloheinu, V'Elohei Avotenu, Shiru Shvacha, Halel V'Zimra, Berachot V'Choraot, Ve'ata V'Yad Olam. Baruch Atah Adonai, Habocher V'Shirei Zimra.
Baruch Hu et Adonai haorah. Baruch
I was thinking that depending on where you might attend services, you might see that a lot of people bow in the Baruch Hu. And anytime you see that word Baruch Hu, it's actually the same consonants as the word for knee. So that's how it sort of has this double meaning, like, blessed are you, praised are you, but it's also this idea that you might bend the knee, you see, is a way of praising. So that's why you sometimes will see a lot of people going, Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach, like that. Little bit of. So we're on the top of page 136. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or u'borei choshech osei shalom u'borei et hakol hame'er la'aretz v'ledarim alecha berachamim u'v'tuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam b'chokhmah asita melach ha'aretz kinyanecha titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha v'al moreh or Shasita Yifa'arucha Selah Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzer Hamerot. Let's continue together. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching. Make us faithful to your commandments and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you in proclaiming unity. We praise you, O God. In love you have called your people, Israel, to serve you. And we rise for the Shabbat. 137. Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levacha, b'chol nafshecha, v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh, asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha v'vitecha, v'vlechtecha v'derech, v'shofbecha v'kumecha, v'shatam le'ot al yadecha, v'hayu le'totafot v'einecha, V'tavtam al mezuzot ve'tacha u'v'yesharecha. We can resume our seats.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם הכל מצוותיי, הייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אמת ויציב וישר וקיים, וטוב ויפה הדבר הזה עלינו לעולם ועד. Let's continue in the English. Good and beautiful and true, sound, established and enduring are these words, now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are sovereign God and Redeemer. As you were the God and Redeemer of our ancestors, You are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We have known you always as our helper and our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly you are first and you are last. We have no Redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang
Elim Adonai, Amocha, Neda Bakodesh, Torah Tehilo, Osef Eleh, Torah Tehilo, Israel, Kuma Bezrat Israel, Aleinu, Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, Kadosh Israel, Baruch atah Adonai, God Israel, God Israel, Israel.
And on the top of page 140, we rise for the tefillah.
Adonai Sefer Tiftach, Ufi Yagi Teilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ikonei Hakol, V'zocher Chazdei Avot v'Imachot, U'meivi Gula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo v'Yahava, Melech Hozer U'Moshiach Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'Yisrael Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Machayei Meitim Atah, Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv Haruach, U'Morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh, U'Morid HaTal.
Mechalchel Chaim b'chesed, Machayei Meitim b'rachamim rabim, Somek noflim v'rofeh cholim, U'matir asurim, U'mechayem emunato l'shenei afar. Mi chamocha ba'al gevrot, U'midom elach, Melech meimit u'machayeh, u'matzmiach Yeshua.
Ne'aman atah l'chachayot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Machayei Meitim.
Nekadesh et shemcha ba'olam, Shem שמכחישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, על יד נביאך. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא הארץ כבודו.
כבודו מלא עולם.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
במקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אדוני ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה, לדור ודור, לדור ודור. נצחים ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך קדושתך נקדיש. ולנצח נצחים ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך קדושתך נקדיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גד לך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גד לך. בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לא ימוש לעולם ועד. בשבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לא ימוש לעולם ועד.
Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. And we can resume our seats. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts this message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, המחדשי שביעי, מחדשי שביעי, עולם ישבו ויתענגו מטובך. קראת זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. צווינו מטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך. ותהל לבנו, ותהל לבנו, לעבדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך שבת קודשך וינוחו ישראל וינוחו ישראל מקדשי שמך.
Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Shabbat. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath.
Say Adonai Eloheinu Ba'alcha Israel Utefilata Be'ahava Techabel Tamid avodat Israel Amecha Israel Amecha Baruch atah
Continue together in the middle of the page. We give thanks that you, Eternal One, our God, as you are the God of our ancestors. You are the rock of our life, the power that shields us in every age. We thank and praise you for our lives, which are in your hand, for our souls, which are in your keeping, for the signs of your presence we encounter every day, and for your wondrous gifts at all times, morning, noon, and night. Praise you, O God, source of goodness, to whom our thanks are due.
Sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Aleinu ve'al chol Yisrael amecha, sim shalom. Aleinu ve'al chol yoshvei tevel, sim shalom. Shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim.
As a loving parent, bless us with the light of your presence. For by the light of your presence, eternal God, you have revealed to us the law of life, a love of kindness and righteousness, blessing and mercy, life and peace. For it is good in your sight that your people Israel and all peoples be blessed at all times with your gift of peace. We praise you, O God, the source of peace. We continue now with our own prayers and reflections for a few moments.
Oh, say shalom bimromah. Oh, yeah, say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yeah, say shalom. Yeah, say shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yeah, say shalom. Yeah, say shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yeah, say shalom. Yeah, say shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yeah, say shalom. Yeah, say shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel.
Before we move to the Torah service, we're going to do something slightly different. You might note that it says the service may continue with prayers and readings on various themes. And we don't often use these, but the one for this Torah portion, Emor, I think is particularly nice. It's called the Sanctification of Time. And actually, Robin, I'm wondering if you'd like to come and lead this. It's English. I know you can read English. 276. So if, and we'll all join you for this stuff that's italics, that's the responsive reading. Yep.
These are the appointed seasons of the Eternal One, which you shall proclaim. They are my appointed seasons. It was the glory of Greece to have discovered the idea of the cosmos, the world of space. It was the achievement of Israel to have experienced history, the world of time. The Hebrews affirmed the reality and importance of time. To them, it was not an illusion, something from which one must escape, but something which must be redeemed. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vaults of the sky, to separate day from night, and let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation."
Before the mountains, that's everybody, before the mountains, ever you formed the earth and the world. From eternity to eternity, you are God.
For 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is in the past, or as a watch in the night.
The span of our life is 70 years or 80 in case of strength.
Yet trouble and sorrow fill their duration, for they are soon gone and we fly away. So teach us to number
For our days, that we may get ourselves heart of wisdom.
Because life is short, every day is precious. Because the flow of time is irreversible, every moment is an opportunity that will not come again. The past we may remember or forget. The future we may hope or fear. The present is for living. The present is what we need to sanctify.
If a religious duty comes your way, perform it immediately, or if not now.
The supply of time is a daily miracle. You wake up in the morning and lo, your purse is magically filled with 24 hours of the unmanufactured tissue of the universe of life. It is yours, the most precious of your possessions.
What is time? A shadow on the dial, the striking of the clock, the running of sand, day and night, summer and winter, months, years, centuries. These are but arbitrary and outward signs. The measure of time, not time itself. Time is the life of the soul.
Moses promises a goodly old age, not meaning, we may be sure, a life of long duration, but a life lived wisely. For the goodness of days living ranks as far above multitudes of years, as the briefer daylight above an eternal darkness.
Some gain eternity, only after many years.
Some gain innocent hour. Good. Keep going.
Why don't we just take a few moments and each of us silently read the meditation and think a little bit about how we might learn to better use our time and sanctify time in our own lives. We're going to continue now with the service for reading of Torah, and we'll turn to page 490. And I'm going to need people. It says assemble the people. And I'm going to definitely need quite a few of you, actually. So self-select, please. I need at least...
You need some ark openers, don't you?
I need ark openers. I need someone to take the scroll out. I'm going to need someone for an aliyah. So please self-select. Okay, here comes one. That's good.
The ark will be opened.
Yes. The ark will be open. Who's going to take the scroll out? Come on, Brian.
Sorry, Brian. Your weekly workout. My muscles are taking a pummeling. The wrong one.
So assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities, to hear and learn to revere the Eternal One, your God, and observe faithfully all the precepts of this Torah, and that their children who do not yet know it hear, that they too may learn to revere the Eternal One, your God. Please rise as the orchestra. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu Adonai iti, v'neromema Shemo Yachtav.
Lecha Adonai Agadol Atiferet Eret v'chanetzak v'hahod Tichol b'shamayim u'aretz Tichol b'shamayim u'aretz Lecha Adonai ha'mamlecha v'hamitnaseh l'chol rosh.
Okay. Can sit down and let's see if I can find it. Yes, very good. You didn't even misroll it. Perfect. Now then, I do need someone for an aliyah.
So in English.
You can say the prayers in English if you'd like to come up. Come up. Why ever not? Do you want to tell me your Hebrew name and I'll call you up?
I don't know my Hebrew name. Really always give me one, but I don't know. So give me a Hebrew name.
Well, I'll just say, Ya'amod al-HaTorah. Philip al-HaTorah. It's fine.
And my synagogue wheels like a mitzvah, I have no record of it either.
Yeah, it's funny. I always think it's
When we got
a
married,
good idea to give bar mitzvah kids a certificate because then at least they've got their name.
Where was I reading?
Bring your cigar.
And I didn't read it.
Well, actually, that's all right.
I'll read it.
I don't know what's happened to it actually because there should be a blessing sheet up here. There usually is, but it appears to have wandered off. Here you go. Try this.
Where am I going to read it? Praise the one to whom our praise is due.
Praise be the Eternal One, to whom our praise is due forever.
We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have called us to serve you by giving us Torah.
We
We praise you, O God,
giver of Torah.
Right. Don't go away. You have to stay there. You have to stand for
Check it out.
a few minutes. Vince, do you want to come have a look at where I'm reading?
I think Dominic would be better at
Where
this.
do you start?
No, just,
Where do you
everybody's
start?
entitled to an Alliance
Yeah.
Torah. Please do not.
Where do you start?
I'm starting here. Like a bear. I should tell you all what we're reading. It's Leviticus 23, verses 1 through 14. It's towards the end of the parasha Emor. And we'll get an English translation read afterwards. So you'll understand what you're reading if you're not following along. But you could go and get yourself a Tanakh or a Chumash if you wanted. Anyway. All right. Vaydaber, what you don't have to do is hold on to that. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael, v'yamarta aleihem, moadei Adonai, asher tikra'u otam, mimkomo, I can't read it. Mikra Kodesh, Elehem moadei, sheshet yamim ta'aseh, מלאכה, וביום השביעי שבת, שבתון, מקרא קודש. כל מלאכה לא תעשו, שבת היא לאדוני בכל משפטכם. אלה מועדי אדוני מקרא קודש, אשר תקראו אותם במועדים. בחודש הראשון, the first month, בארבעה עשר, on the 14th day, לחודש of the month, בין הארבעים פסח, לאדוני, ובחמישה עשר יום לחודש הזה, חג המצות, לאדוני, 7 ימים מצות תאכלו, ביום הראשון מקרא קודש, יהיה לכם כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו, והקרבתם אשר לאדוני 7 ימים ביום השביעי מקרא קודש, כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת עליהם, כי תבוא אל הארץ אשר אני נותן לכם, וקצרתם את קצירה, והני... Have you got it?
No, I've lost it.
It's the third line down in the third paragraph. the end of the third line down in the third paragraph.
Sartam.
And I've got that at Ketzera Vehanitam. There's a it's a Ve. That's the one I struggled with before. It's all pushed together, so it looks like a nun. Vehavitam et Omer Reshit Ketzirchem El Al HaKohen Vechanif et HaOmer Lifnei Adonai Liritz Nechem Mimecharat HaShabbat Yenifenu HaKohen V'asitem Bayom Hanivchem et HaOmer Kavas Tamim Ben Shanato Le'ola Ladonai Uminachto Shnei Esrim Selat Balula Bashemen Asher Ladonai Reach Nechoach V'nesicha Yain Revi'it Hachin Lachem Ulachem Ulul
Ulachem
V'chali V'karmel Lo Tochelu Ad Etzim Hayom Hazeh Ad Ha Ve'echem Et Korban Elohechem Chukat Olam L'Doratechem B'chol Mishvotechem. Now you get to do the blessing after.
We praise you, eternal one, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have given us true teachings and implanted within us eternal life. We
Praise you, God, giver of Torah.
Well, you'll hear in a moment. So, what this section of Torah was talking about is the establishment. Really, it's about the cycle of time and the feasts and festivals. So, the beginning of it goes about other things, but this particular part says, in translation, the Eternal spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, these are my fixed times, the fixed times of the Eternal, which you shall proclaim as sacred occasions. On 6 days, work may be done, but on the 7th day, there will be a Sabbath of complete rest, a sacred occasion. You shall do no work. It shall be a Sabbath of the Eternal throughout your settlements. These are the set times of the Eternal, the sacred occasions which you shall celebrate each at its appointed time. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight, there shall be a Passover offering to the Eternal." See? Everybody recognized that word, right? "And on the 15th day of that month, the Eternal's feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days. On the first day, you shall celebrate a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. 7 days, you shall make gifts to the Eternal. The 7th day shall be a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations." The Eternal spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land that I am giving to you, and you reap its harvest, you shall bring the first sheaf of your harvest to the priest. He shall elevate the sheaf before the Eternal for acceptance in your behalf. The priest shall elevate it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day," so this is basically on the day of elevation, which is the words that I kept tumbling and stumbling over because they're funny words. "On the day that you elevate the sheaf, you shall offer as a burnt offering to the Eternal a lamb of the first year without blemish. The grain offering with it shall be 2/10 of a measure of choice flour with oil, mixed in, a gift of pleasing oil, a pleasing odor to the Eternal. And the libation with it shall be of wine, a quarter of a hin. Until that very day you have brought the offering to your God, you shall eat no bread or parched grain or fresh ears. It is a law for all time throughout the ages in all your settlements. And this goes on through all of the rest, through quite a few more of the festivals. So, appointed times and seasons.
Dismissed.
You're dismissed.
Thank you.
And now I need some lifters and tires again. And we're on page 492.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'tishtachavu v'hakol shol. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'tishtachavu v'hakol shol. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu.
It's a little bit about sort of reading Torah. When you get to the end of lines, because scrolls are all handwritten, and there are certain rules and regulations about how many letters and spaces, everything you should have on a line. Well, you know your own handwriting, right? So you're writing along and everything looks perfectly beautiful, and then you get to the end of the page, and so you squidge it all together, and that's exactly what happens sometimes. So you run into things like some of the letters, like the baits, if they're thinned down and pushed together, they can look very much like nuns. So when you get to the end of a line, sometimes they're like, what is that? The letters are all a bit misshaped. And then, of course, just like us, each of us have our own handwriting. So do the scribes. So every scroll is just slightly different. And because some of the scrolls are fairly old, and they've been repaired a few times, and so when they're repaired, sometimes they might have to have an entirely new section put in or something. So you can find that in a scroll, the writing changes throughout the scroll. So you get used to reading it, the parsha that you read before, and oh, well, that's easy. This is really easy to read. And then you'll come to a section of the scroll where it's like, what is that? So, just a word of warning when any of you read Torah.
That's where we can have the photo of the student to the Bar Mitzvah student. So they
basically practice, and why you have always a tikkun that you practice out of. But I used to have a much larger print tikkun, and it's disappeared. So as my eyes have gotten worse, I've been reduced to an ever smaller, because on one side it has the pointed text, and then over here it has the text as the way maybe standard would be in most Torah scrolls, but it doesn't obviously account for the fact that the scribe's handwriting would be different. So you can practice, you can look at the unpointed side, and if you can't read a word, that you can go and check the pointed side. So that's what you use to work from. But I really have no idea what happened to him. I had a large print one, and somewhere over the last years it's walked off. Anyway, please rise on page 493, and let's say together all the community prayers. And you know what? I'm giving you some word. You can read the prayers because you're up here.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Eternal God, whose dominion embraces the universe, we ask your blessing to our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and all the royal family, for those who govern the country, and all who influence the quality of the national life. Make them conscious of their responsibilities, and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will.
May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excels in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, so that it may be a force for righteousness and peace in the life of humanity.
May the one who blessed our ancestors bless all our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel, who went to synagogues to pray and to give aid to those in need. May the Holy One, to whom all praise is due, hear their prayers and help them to fulfill their aspirations for good. Eternal God, our rock and Redeemer, grant blessing to the state of Israel, created to fulfill an age-old dream, and to be a haven for the oppressed. Inspire its leaders and citizens with faithfulness to the aims of its sponsors, to develop the land for the benefit of all its inhabitants, and to implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice. May they live in harmony with one another and in peace with their neighbors, and cause to come true once more the ancient vision that out of Zion shall go forth Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Shem Adonai, ki nizkar shemo levado.
עוד על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו, תהילה לכל עשידה, לפני ישראל עם קרוב. הללויה, הללויה.
This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel in time to come, says the Eternal One. I will put my teaching within them and engrave it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. No longer shall anyone need to teach a friend or a neighbor to know me, for they all shall know me, young and old alike.
Ashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashua Hadesh yameinu kakeden Hadesh yameinu kakeden.
You can all sit down now. So, we've just heard the reading about the times and the seasons and how they're sort of linked together. So, who knows what, because we've just finished Passover. So, what's going on now? What's the next festival? Shavuot. And what happens between Passover? The Omer, right. So here we are, freed from Mitzrayim, freed from that narrow, confining place. Or are we? We're traveling now towards Shavuot, towards the giving of Torah. In our Seders, we heard Moses tell Pharaoh, "Let my people go." We should remember that the full verse reads, "Let my people go, that they may serve me." That was the purpose of our leaving Egypt, and it is still our goal. One lesson we can learn from Passover is that there are two very different types of freedom. The most popular notion of freedom is the idea of freedom from. We tend to think of freedom as equaling the absence of coercion. Now clearly, that's one element of the coming out of Mitzrayim. We spoke in our Seders and our liturgy about being forced into hard labor. Perhaps we even beat each other with scallions during Dayenu to remind ourselves of the taskmaster's whips. We did, didn't we? But that is an incomplete notion of freedom. The fuller notion of freedom that Passover should give us is the idea of freedom too. The journey that began in Mitzrayim led eventually to Sinai. The ancient Israelites' search for freedom led them to the acceptance of the responsibility L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, to repair the world under God's sovereignty. Liberation meant the opportunity to develop a society which embodied the values of justice, of human freedom and dignity. And some of those rules were found in last week's Torah portion, Kedoshim. Not only is Passover linked to Shavuot every year through that ritual of the counting of the Omer, but also through the frequent reference to our slavery as a reason for Torah laws. Time and again in Torah, the reason given for many of the laws concerning how we are to treat each other is, for you were strangers in Mitzrayim, and the Holy One liberated you with an outstretched hand. The freedom, too, seems much more difficult than the freedom from. Much of Exodus, as we have seen not too long ago, is taken up with the constant moaning and complaints of the Israelites, the longing to go back to Egypt, the complaints about Moses' leadership, and the episode of the golden calf. The freedom to build a holy community seems to elude them, never mind undertaking the repair of the world. And yet, they did keep trying. The period of the Omer in which we are now is not well defined in Torah. We have only the simple command to mark it by a countdown. Only by looking at rabbinic literature can we see what its purpose came to be. Our ancestors devoted this time to prayer and reflection to raise their spiritual awareness. Their concern seemed to be that we as a people had still not fully grasped the freedom too. There's a story told of Rabbi Akiva. They said that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of disciples from the towns of Givat to Antipatris, and they all died during one period of time because they did not treat each other with respect. A Tana, that's an ancient commentator, stated, they all died between Passover and Shavuot. An allegory. They perished on the way to Sinai. They never were able to live out the second idea of freedom. I can imagine a scene of squabbling. You can't make me do that. I want the seat at the head of the table. They haven't learned how to treat each other with respect and dignity. Passover marked the physical liberation from the constraints and even slavery of Egypt. The physical shackles were broken. But was that all it took? Was transformation so immediate? No, of course not. The physical liberation had to be accompanied by spiritual development to lead to true freedom. In Exodus, we saw our ancestors journey through the wilderness, both literally and figuratively, as they struggled to understand that freedom wasn't always easy. It was Sinai that gave them the means to be truly free. At Sinai, they received guidance about how to live their lives, guidelines and rules for creating a functional and safe society, one in which people could develop, where there were restraints on accumulation and protection for those who needed it. Liberation meant the opportunity to develop a society which embodied the values of justice, human freedom, and dignity. Without rules, we have license, but not true freedom. Eventually, our ancestors built the Mishkan by working together. They finally made a place for God in their midst. They will know that I am Adonai, their God, who brought them out of Mitzrayim to dwell among them. On this phrase, Rashi comments that as long as the people allow the divine presence to dwell among them, they will remain free. But the moment that people stop actively trying to make the divine manifest, they will metaphorically return to slavery. The section we read today gave us the festivals. Again, something by which to remind ourselves of ways to make the divine manifest in our lives. Not just by a place, but by the sanctification of time. And like our ancestors, we keep moving, not perhaps physically, but through time, from Pesach, our physical liberation, towards Shavuot, our spiritual liberation. Today is 21 days, which is 3 weeks of the Omer. We continue now with our concluding prayers. As we turn to, are we doing and then? Good. We turn to page 213 as we look forward to that time where we will build that perfect world, when we will be able to repair, when we complete our repairing of the world, shall we say. So page 213 for and then.
I've just worked it out that the Israelites wandered around for 40 years trying to get it right. We only get 40 days.
But we get 40 days every year
it.
to force us to think about it, or to help us to think about
So
it.
if we were to live for 365 years, then that's 365 lots of 40, so we'd have as much time as the Israelites, and then we might get it right.
I'm going to try and do that.
Yeah. And then all that's divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then men and women will be gentle, and then both women and men will be strong, and then no person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many, and then all will share equally in the earth's abundance, and then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old, and then all will nourish the young, and then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again.
If you look at the various ideas that this poem brings out, it's a lot of things that indeed are written in Torah about how we should live, how we should treat each other with dignity, how we should care for each other, how we should care for the earth, how we should care for all the creatures on the earth. When we learn to do that, that's when we will have truly learned the lesson of Pesach, the lesson of liberation. The growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. Even when they are gone, the departed are with us. They inspire us to live as in their higher moments they themselves sought to live. We remember them now. They remain in our hearts. They are a continual blessing. And this Shabbat, we think particularly of Estelle Seitman, the mother of Lori Seitman, of Ted Enifer, grandfather of Naomi Enifer, of Ruth Lawrence, the grandmother of Juliet Petrushevich, of Lawrence Ellis, the father of Betty Ellis, of Terry Sales, half-brother of James Sales, of Millie Lawson, the aunt of Mark Wolfe, of George Goldring, the grandfather of Carol Goldring, and the great-grandfather of Holly Goldring. Are there any other names that anyone would like to add as I look around the room? For those whom we have named aloud, for all those whose names we hold in our hearts, and for those who have no one left to say Kaddish for them, we rise on page 524 as we say Kaddish. Yit Gadol v'yit Kadash Shmei Rabbah Bialma Divrach Hirute, Biamlich Malchute, Bachayachon, Bionechon, Luchaye, Bol Beit Israel, Badalah, Bisman Kari, Bimru. Amen. Yehesheme Rabba Korach, Leolam, Leomai. Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitahar, Yitramam, Yitnase, Yitadar, Yitale, Yitalal, Shmei Dusha, Berichu, Le'elam, Kol Berchata, Shelapa, Tushpata, V'nechemata, Da'anim, Yalma, Bimru. Amen. Yehei Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya, B'chaim Aleinu, B'al Kol Yisrael, Bimru. Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimru, Huya Oseh Shalom. Aleinu B'al Kol Yisrael, B'al Kol B'nei Adam, V'imru. Amen. We can resume our seats, and are there any announcements?
I did do a couple that I did last night, and there's also one about tomorrow as well.
Sure? Yes, please. You might as well come and say them, otherwise you just tell me and then I'd have to repeat it.
Some of you, if you've heard it last night, apologies for the repetition. But actually tomorrow, there's it's a Kabbalat Torah trip to the British Museum, but everybody is invited. And Joshua Waganig, that's the one, will be showing us around the archaeological area. He's actually studying archaeology at the moment. I believe we are meeting at 10:30 outside the main entrance, but please, if you could check the newsletter if you want to come along. And if you do want to come along, if you could either let myself or Rabbi Renee know, just so we've got an idea of numbers. And then I think we're going to lunch or having a picnic or something afterwards. It's 10:30 tomorrow, British Museum, but check the newsletter. A couple of other quick ones. Friday, 3rd of June, Big Jubilee Friday night bagels, where we are opening up our garden and community to our local neighbours to come along and help celebrate the Platinum Jubilee with us. So please do come along to support that event and to show all of our neighbours from the local area how lovely we all are. And Saturday the 9th of July, tickets are now on sale for the Ukrainian fundraising concert, where the KLS choir, other musicians, and we've got some guest musicians as well, will be performing. All proceeds from that concert will be matched by KLS and going to charities supporting Ukrainian refugees or working in Ukraine itself. So please, tickets are now on sale. The link is in the bulletin. Again, please buy a ticket and please come along on the night to support the KLS choir, the musicians, and everyone involved in the concert. Thank you very much.
And do you need people for helping to load?
I think we're okay for people. We are loading another van load for Ukrainian. As you can see, we've got a lot of boxes there, and in the mosaic room, we've got the next van coming Monday morning about midday. So we're going to be looking for people from about 11:45 onwards. I think we've probably got enough, but if you are available, either check in with me or Katia, and we'll let you know if you're needed. And also, we'll need some shifts as well next weekend. But again, if you check in with me or Katia, and we'll let you know what's needed.
Okay. And what are we concluding with?
I don't know then. Or
Okay.
My Affair Hayom, whichever you want.
Should we just do Maya Hayom?
Okay.
So let's conclude with Maya Hayom. A nice short song. You're not too, it's not in there, is it? I'm just aware of
It's the
time.
concluding song for the themed reading that we had. So if you turn to the final page of the themed reading.
Which is unfortunately not in the large print version. But it's only got 5 words.
My Affair, how lovely. Hayom, the day. Shabbat shalom. My Affair, Hayom. Shabbat shalom. My Affair, Hayom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Please rise. May the source of strength bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. To say Amen.
Amen.
And I'm sure there's Kiddush in there somewhere.